Oh.
And the person says, well, she didn't have it, probably doesn't already. Oh.
904.
They didn't have anything on the website
Right there.
or the funeral home.
Oh, Patty.
No,
Hi,
They
Patty.
didn't have anything on. There was no.
Is this for family?
Her children and her daughter, yeah, her son.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
How are you,
There
Patty?
is, there is babysitting in progress, so I will be dashing in and out. I'll be muted. And I may be dashing in and out of the frame, so.
Dashing hither and yon. All right, very good.
So anyway, yeah, it was very small, this family, it was, well, very,
I suppose at 94.
yeah, but,
She's lost.
her friend Ellen, who
Yeah.
Mark started with, she, Mark called
Get my little
everybody
correction
was
from
the
there.
other
Yeah.
friends of hers from-
I don't always read it that thoroughly, but it just jumped out at me that's why you need a second set of eyes. It's like, thank you.
And apparently they were.
And again, I thought the
last
services-
night, and I was like, are you coming? I said, no.
The order was
Yeah,
confusing to
I
me.
don't care about that. But they didn't bother. It's too far to come for my mother. I was like,
I know you were very good.
I loved her.
Yeah. So,
Well, that she was a,
that's a good thing you did that.
yeah, so it's that.
Knowing what you could do.
I just, and the last year of isolating her in Germantown, away from everyone, it just,
Sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason.
no. Just, I suggested looking at the Jewish home and finding what they have.
Oh, wouldn't that be involved?
And she would have at least, she would have known everything there probably, if she would have met them again every day, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she would have at least had, a cer- you know,
Was
she went to
isolated?
school every Friday. She went for everything.
Oh.
And she was so involved. So to put her up there was just basically. After they took away, after they took away her credit cards, her Facebook page, her phone, every means of communication.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like,
With a purpose.
there was no purpose. I just said, I just told Ellen, who would take her places, no matter what she wants, get it for her, tell me what it is, and I'll pay for it, don't let her do that.
Yeah.
Sorry for the loss.
Yeah.
It's the way she's.
Yeah. More than the loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we get started, because I understand this program. Milwaukee and folks are gonna be.
Yeah, we're gonna leave a little early to grab a little lunch.
We will wrap up early this week. All right, so. So bitty break Torah, so get up, so bitty break Torah, so get up, so bitty break Torah, so get up, so bitty break Torah, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. All right, so welcome back. First off, a couple of miscellaneous administrivia kinds of things. No class next Wednesday, as we're going right into the big Thanksgiving, so we'll take next week off. This Sunday, as all of you should have received from the email blast, thanks to Mark, the Hanukkah Fun Day. And I'm specifically mentioning it to all y'all here because I am doing an adult learning session at 10 o'clock in the sanctuary with the parents of the kids who are here. And as I've mentioned to a number of you, on a typical Sunday morning, there are 4 or 5 parents in this room. They've got their laptops and their tablets and so on, and they get their coffee and so on, and that's great like that. But between us, there's not a whole heck of a lot going on at Temple, other than the kids are downstairs at school and they're up here chatting with one another. I did ask if they would be up for some adult learning there. And every now and then, and they said that would be great. So I want to do some grown-up study about Hanukkah on Sunday morning, but my other purpose, my not so subtle other purpose is I need these parents to meet all y'all. You are serious Jews. You're here on a Wednesday morning at 10:30 to study Judaism. You're very involved in the temple, and my concern is that for the parents that are here on Sunday mornings, that if that's all they see of CEW, then why should they stick around after their child becomes bar mitzvah? What is there here? So we need to give them something more than my kids are downstairs learning. So if you can, I understand not everybody can do Sunday mornings. I'm not doing it every week. It'll probably be about once a month. But when you can, please come and meet these people, schmooze with them, talk with them, be friendly. Invite, if it's a mom, and invite her to a sisterhood thing or something like that. But let's start making some connections between the school and
We've tried.
I know.
But
It
we're gonna say-
it requires, it's like,
We're all thinking it, but
it's like
we'll
a,
try it again.
it's like a garden or a marriage. Both require constant tending and effort. Okay, you never get to say about a garden, it's like, okay, good, we're done, great. It's like, no, there's always more to do. You get it ready for the winter, okay, great, snow, but then springtime, and it's okay, time for this. And just as with a marriage, it's like, you and your partner are going to grow and change, and that's how things should be, and
Or not.
but the myth of happily ever after with a marriage is one of the most problematic. So anyway, so Sunday at 10. So please be here if at all you can.
And the gift shop will be open
Yes.
at 9. I'm gonna put a note on the door at 10 to come to the, and
There you
then
go.
if they need me, here, that's where I'll be. So
Yep.
please bring cash to us
Yes.
first one.
And what is really left?
There's, I haven't gone through it.
How many Hanukkah shower curtains are left? That's the burning question. for everybody.
All right, well,
Just
There's-
enough,
Just enough.
wait,
Just
it's
exactly.
coming to you with your Hanukkah advent calendar. I found
Yeah.
It was on, I saw a Hanukkah advent calendar.
Oh, twisted.
I mean, it was cute, and if they called it something else, it probably wouldn't have been offensive, but, yeah,
Twisted.
uh-huh.
Yeah. What about this holiday do you not understand?
Mhm.
It's like, well, clearly a lot. As I'm sure you all, as I have been asked multiple times about, oh, Hanukkah, that's the Jewish Christmas. Like,
And-
no.
Yeah, Passover's that.
Right, well, there are some similarities there, so,
No.
but yes, let's do it. Okay. Anyway, liturgy. Okay, so here Photoshop the morning lesson. So page 24 in Mishkan Tefillah, and everybody needs the big book because the skinny book doesn't have daily liturgy. Okay, all right.
24, yeah. That's great service.
Okay, so there's been an interesting phenomenon of within Reform services in some places where some of these prayers and blessings are done in the sanctuary. But I would say that many of the first prayers in here are really meant to be said at home. So you okay? What?
I forgot my book is defective.
Oh,
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
all right. So on page 24, you have the prayer Modeh or Moda Ani Lefanecha. I offer thanks to you, Melech Chai V'Kayam, ever living sovereign. Shehechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla. You have returned my soul to me in mercy. Rabba emunatecha, great is your, they translate this as trust. The root word is amen, meaning faith. Great is your faithfulness, okay? And this notion of when we sleep, we don't know what our soul does exactly, but we are this knowledge, this idea within Judaism that we should acknowledge the miracle of waking up every day, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm back. Got another day here I've been blessed with this opportunity of another day.
Is
I
this sung or chanted, or, it's not something that is part of my daily repertoire, but
Right.
that's why I'm here, so.
There are some melodies.
Can you do it?
I became familiar with it, as I think most Reformed Jews became familiar with it, with the melody by Jeff Klepper and Danny Freelander, Pull the Setter. And they basically would write Jewish liturgical tunes at Kitty Kaplan at Eisner Camp in Great Barrington. They write tunes at night, and then they try them out at song session the next day. And the ones that stuck, it's like, oh, okay, this is that. So they wrote back practically 50 years ago. Mo dehani levanecha melechai bekayam shechazarta binishmati bechem la rabba emunatecha. My friend and colleague, Rabbi Cantor Ravi Sherwin, she wrote with a mutual friend, Scott Leader. She referred to that melody that Jeff and Danny wrote as that's the perky host of the 5 a.m. morning show. For those of us that need a little bit more help in waking up, and we don't do perky quite so well in the morning, they wrote, coffee, yes. They wrote a lovely meditative version that I recorded some years ago, and that I like to use. It's a little faster than I usually do it, but it's as my friend Robbie said, that melody from Ode Ani is for folks who need a few cups of coffee before they're ready to really get up and go. There was a wonderful, one second, I saw ages ago, there was a little thing online about a poem for morning. Coffee, 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 coffee,
Yeah.
coffee, shut up, coffee, coffee, coffee. Okay. It's like, yep, so,
What is the difference between Model and Model?
good question, and thank you, and if there's ever something like that comes up, please say, no, sorry. It's masculine and feminine. It's just, yeah. So you say modek if you are a guy, and moda if you are a girl, and yes, there is there are lots of activity trying to figure out ways of using the Hebrew language for folks who don't exclusively identify as one or the other. In the immortal words of Tevye, it's a new world, called a new world. So, but there's some really good efforts being made by folks to try to, what do we do with this? If we've got a prayer that says one or the other, and it's clearly, Hebrew is binary in that way. It's a gendered language.
One of the words of the king of Siam is a puzzle.
It is a puzzle, yes.
So do you say both of them, or do you say the one that applies to you?
That's a good question.
Yes, to be defined.
Yeah, I mean, and this is all relatively recent, and we're still, things are still being kind of taken for a shakedown cruise. I mean, there's no unified way of doing. There are some there are some renewal congregations, there are some funky places that go back and forth in the Hebrew of the bracha formula. And Baruch atah Adonai, that atah is a masculine second person you. And they will alternate back and forth between blessings of saying Baruch atah Adonai and Brucha at Hashchina or something like that. And I mean, easy for me to say from my place of privilege as a male, as a cishet male, it's metaphor. Okay, don't take it so literally, but that's easy for me to say because my pronouns are the default in Hebrew. My pronouns are the default. So it's an interesting time, and we, who knows what it'll look like years from now. But I think that the movement to do that is a sign of health in Judaism. And people are addressing things that this is not an issue that would have even come up 20 years ago, I think.
I don't think it's easy for anybody to really grasp everything that is involved.
Yeah, I shared with you the Torah of Rav Esme Patz, and discussing about God, and God is more than just male and more than just female and so on, and just her effortless statement of, oh, so God is a they. My rabbi friend Ethan Frenzel, he said he loved it and said, and it's perfect because they is a plural pronoun, but Elohim is a plural word for the one God. So it's like it even works in that way. So
German and I think Latin's very long ago. And I don't know what others.
Yeah, I mean it's
a little different.
Right, it's a little different, and it's go ahead.
In French, they have on is one of the pronouns, for third person plural, there's he, she, and on.
Yeah.
One, you've heard of that sort of one knows, one can this or that. And it's actually an actual pronoun that's part of the conjugation in French. But again, sometimes you can just be tortured, and in English though especially.
Right, and the reform movement and everybody writing a contemporary prayer book these days has, there's various linguistic pretzel twisting and linguistic pretzel twistings to try to avoid using exclusively masculine God language. But sometimes just the efforts that they use to try to avoid it just calls more attention to it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel, again, from my place of privilege, of going back and forth between Baruch atah Adonai and Rucha at Hashchina. It's like, that's just calling way more attention to it. And it's taking me out of the prayer space because it's, for me, very jarring. But anyway, but I think it's, liturgy evolves. And if you take nothing away from this Midrash unit that we'll be doing for however long we do it until we get tired of it, the liturgy evolves, and different places use different things at different points in time and so on. And we'll look at some of that. But the Siddur is an evolving, living document. So who knows what the Reform Siddur of 2050 is, assuming we're not all underwater. But who knows what kind of options it will have for language and things. So we'll just have to wait.
It's all the unknown.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. All right, so that's the first thing that you say. I was doing a fascinating little prayer project through Institute for Jewish Spirituality, and it focused on the four sections of the prayer service of the morning prayer service. We are Photoshop by the morning blessings, Sukkot Zimra, the Psalms of Praise, the Baruchu, the Shema blessings, and then the Amidah. And it was fascinating because one of the things they were really suggesting was to be really intentful and mindful about saying these blessings in either Hebrew or English when you first awaken, and not to just dash them off, but to really think about what they mean and so on like that. I had a problem with that. It was a great idea. I had a problem. Mark's laughing. He knows exactly where I'm going with this. Unfortunately, when my soul was returned to me in the morning, let's just say I feel a certain sense of urgency that gets in the way of okay, I'm going to be very intently and focused on the words of this prayer before I do anything. It's like, nope, I got other things I got to do. So it's a great idea, but yeah, anyway. And certainly I'll just back up all of the stuff that we're talking about, but especially these opening morning prayers. You said this wasn't in your repertoire there. You can make a kind of a morning prayer ritual out using these as guidelines, and if there are ones that call to you, then by all means, just go ahead. If they don't, then say, okay, that one's not for me. But I've played around with that at times, and what I did some years ago is different from what I do now. Again, my prayer practice evolves. But saying this in the morning can be a lovely, before you get out of bed, this saying this prayer in Hebrew or English, you can use the transliteration. It can be a lovely acknowledgement of God willing, you wake up every morning. This is a way of acknowledging the miracle that is, and the wonder. I am going to be responding to some text messages because I need to. Our daughter is setting up my wife's iPad. Hers died, and try finding a regular iPad in the Northeast these days. Just try. Supply chain, so on like that. So I was going to just order one online for her, and then I thought, well, this is Wisconsin. Who knows? Best Buy in Brookfield didn't have one. Target did.
Yeah, great.
So she's setting it up now. So and I'm needing to send her codes from Apple all right. Moving on.
No problem.
Okay. So this next page 26. Page 26. And you get this prayer, and the choices that they've made in here, it's kind of an odd mixture between, do we do this in the synagogue or do we do this at home? Now, traditionally, of course, a traditional Jew would wear a talit for blessings, but would certainly not wear it into the restroom to relieve themselves. That's why the talit racks are out there. It's like, don't wear your talis into the bathroom. But we have this bracha, which is drawn some from I think Psalm 104, where we say Barchi Nafshi Adonai, bless Adonai my soul. And oh my God, how great you are! You are robed in glory and majesty, Hod v'Hadar, wrapping yourself in light as in a garment, spreading forth the heavens like a curtain. My pranksterish teacher, Rabbi David Zaslow, the author of this Siddur, said this prayer and wrapping yourself in a talit, like wrapping yourself in light. It's like this is the first example of a cloaking device in history. We Jews invented it. It's we're wrapping ourselves in light. And then the bracha for actually, wearing the talit. It's a commandment bracha, so it's a share kedushan of the mitzvotav mitzivanu, indicating that this is a sacred opportunity, a mitzvah. Lechitatef batzitzit, to wrap ourselves up in the tzitzit, in the fringes, in the strings. And keep in mind, a talit It's the fringes that are the important part. That's the part that works. The talit, and many of them in this day and age, especially ones usually worn by women, are extraordinary works of art, and you can have just gorgeous, gorgeous talitot that I've seen, and but it's the strings on the end that work, just similar to a mezuzah. Okay, a mezuzah on your door can be an incredible work of art that can be very expensive. It's the little scroll, it's a little piece of paper inside, that's the part that works.
But is it not a mitzvah to make those things beautiful?
Yes, and that's a principle called hidur mitzvah, which means if you're going to do something that God is commanding us, it's best to do it in as nice a way as possible. Or as I like to say, you can make kiddush on Friday night with a Dixie cup, with a paper cup. There's nothing that's perfectly kosher, no problem. But it's nice if you have a beautiful kiddush cup. I mean, this is why there's so much functional Jewish artwork. And if you think about it, it's like a lot of things found like in a Judaica gift shop. A lot of things, a lot of Jewish artwork is functional. Okay? You have different styles of Hanukkah menorahs. You have various styles of kiddush cups and candlesticks and mandala sets and so on, and like that. And but for exactly that principle of if you're going to do something that's commanded of you, do it in as nice a way as you can.
Sorry for the digression, but
No
one
problem.
time on Antiques Roadshow, I saw the most gorgeous tzedakah box come up. And the person who owned it had the slightest idea what it was. No idea what it was. And they bought it, I don't know, at a yard sale or a garage sale, something. They had no clue what it was.
Yeah.
And the Judaica expert just crelled over this tzedakah box. And the person was like, oh, and it was worth a lot of money.
And we have a really nice one, but I think we've forgotten to put things in it.
Well, has anybody checked to see if there's anything in there?
Ellen does periodically.
Ellen does?
Yeah, okay, and that was because at Cindy's bat mitzvah, wasn't that
Yeah.
from Cindy's bat mitzvah? Yeah.
All right.
I forget about it. It's right there.
Maybe we should have the kids, but they might give a little stuff.
Yeah, we should.
And then, of course, it's made the rounds a lot on Facebook and elsewhere of an ad for what do they call it, like Indian sculpture of an elk or something, and it's a chai. It's the word chai. It's a chai necklace, but the not knowing that it was Hebrew letters.
In Moment Magazine, those kinds of things show up at the back, it's called Spice Box.
Yes, Spice Box. Yes.
The last page, it has, like, there'll be a picture of a mother and a daughter blessing Shabbat candles, and the caption from the art catalog will say, "Mother and daughter playing peekaboo."
Oh my God. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to say, that I just scanned the reading on page 27. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I really enjoy about Mishkan Tefillah. I mean, it's like there are times when it's like, who cares what's on the right side of the page? I mean, wow, this is really beautiful. This is good.
I'm gonna have
My daughter, she still has it. I'm setting up the iPad for her mother even as we speak. When she was a young child, she had this blanket, she would do it as her baby. And it went everywhere with her. And I mean, this hunk of fabric was so beloved. A friend of ours made it for her when she was born. She still got it. I know she does. But I remember one day she came out and it had been folded and she said, "Look, Daddy, I have a talit like you." And I looked at her and I said, "I hope one of these days, my talit can be as intensely loved as that blanket, as your blanket is. I mean, to be able to wear a talit with that much love, something I've always aspired to. So,
One kid that left us on that.
Oh, yeah.
Saving grace.
All right. Your book is missing
My
some
book is
pages.
defective.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's incomplete. Well, I bought it in 2011, so.
Yeah, they're probably not gonna let you return it
No, I
after 10
don't
years,
It's a-
but, no. Okay, so moving on then, and within context of traditional prayers in the morning, you would, traditionally, men, and now in this day and age, women can wear tefillin if they so desire. And we have we have the blessings for putting on the arm tefillin and the forehead tefillin, and wrapping yourself, and you have this quotation from Hosea as you wrap the leather straps around your hand about, I will betroth you to me forever. I'm at the bottom of 28. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and justice and kindness and mercy. I will betroth you to myself in faithfulness, and you shall know Adonai. And it's this, I never really got into tefillin particularly. Never, as someone who grew up in a Reform context, it's like, no, we don't do that. Reform Jews don't do that because that's nobody did when I was growing up. That's, you know, I certainly didn't receive a set of tefillin when I became bar mitzvah. And going back again, Rabbi David Zaslav, he made a contemporary kind of riff on it because he does wear tefillin when he does in the morning, and he says he said it's a way of integrating the mind and the heart because the box goes on the left hand, so it's close to the heart. So it's a way of like getting everything, you know, engaged. There's no end to the Star Trek metaphors, especially.
I vaguely
So.
remember my father like showing
Mhm.
when I was little and then that stopped. I don't remember it.
When I was in Golders Green, which a lot of Hasidim there in northwest of London and like that. I forget what exactly the situation was, but I was feeling a little testy for whatever reason, and it was Friday afternoon, so of course the Chabadniks were out and forth. We'd like to do a mitzvah. We'd like to do a mitzvah. Not now, thank you. Are you Jewish? Yes. Want to do a mitzvah? No. Leave me alone.
Not that one.
Not that one.
I find it very curious when the Orthodox daven in the aisles of a plane.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
really?
Oh, I have, when we were on our first
Trip to
temple trip
Israel.
to Israel, our first temple trip to Israel, we were at, I think it was in the Madrid airport, transferring planes. And the Chabadniks were in the airport and they came up to our group. I remember Phil Schumann, they asked Phil Schumann if he wanted to lay tefillin. I think he might have done it, I don't know. Alan thought it was hysterical. No, I don't know.
I mean,
They asked Jack in Israel.
Oh, I'm sure that.
And I was ready to volunteer, but I didn't know. No.
I almost did. I almost went over and said, how about me? But I thought, well, it's not worth it.
Oh, you should have, and then looked at the look on their face.
Nah, I did.
Yeah,
Just be, you know, antagonistic needlessly.
Oh, that wasn't in Israel, that was in Paris.
Anyway,
But it's still the feeling, that at one time Bethel Marathon was on Mequon Road, and they were the only egalitarian, traditional egalitarian synagogue at the time. And I had just come back from Tulsa, and I went to Shockley for a while and laid to tefillin in that. And there's a real physical, oh gosh, I don't know how to describe it. It's a real, you know, prayer is words and you sit there and you're not really doing anything. But this was something that you did with your body and with your actual moving. And I remember the feeling it involves you physically in the prayer. And it was very nice of the gentleman to, not to make too many snide remarks about my being there, but it was a
a good experience to do.
Yeah.
And speaking of Chabadniks on the street, a lot of times there are a lot of people waiting to get their tefillin done. And I went up to the fella, I mean, talk about hoods, but went up to the fella and I said, well, if you don't want them waiting for too long, I can help you. Yeah, oh, you should have said something and gotten the look on his face.
Well,
Can't blame him.
yeah, I mean, and I suspect that's why I was feeling testy, because I had just arrived in London and I was feeling pretty jet lagged that morning. So, but yeah, it's again, these can be words. They can be words, which are powerful things, but they can also be very physical embodiments of actions, which is one of the things I really like, and I'll call your attention to it when we get there. But as I said, the Birchot Shachar, the earth, of the four elements, the four worlds. This is the realm of earth. This is the realm of physical, and these are very physical prayers. So much like when you as an actor, when you get your costume on, that changes you. Okay, that's a huge piece of getting into character, and so yeah, exactly. And so when you have something strapped to your arm and to your forehead, and you're wrapped up in a talit, so that's powerful stuff.
It's like what you do when you stretch out the words in the Shema.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you can just feel that breath, that's a physical manifestation.
Yeah.
Or bowing.
It's one of the reasons I love Sukkot, and I encourage folks to build their own sukkah, especially parents with younger kids, because the kids can help to whatever ability they can given their age and like that. But it's so physical, it's so tactile. Jews with powerfuls. But
Yeah.
it couldn't do it this year, but this coming year, because Sukkot will be later in terms of the secular calendar. I've got a model that it's for under $100, and really with minimal tools, you can put up a sukkah in your backyard or wherever. And it's really not that difficult. You do not need to spend hundreds of dollars on sukkah kits and like that. It's really easy. And so
And you have to remember when you move, put the sukkah on the fan, because my sukkah is probably still on the patio in Tulsa.
I put up with that, I was just fine. I love putting the wrenches.
all right. Next page 30. Matohu, and Torah quote and psalm verses, but the opening line, Matohu Olecha Yaakov Mishkenatecha Yisrael. I love the notion that this is traditionally what you say when you first enter into the synagogue in the morning. And I love the fact that we are quoting a non-Jewish sorcerer who was hired to put a curse on us, but instead ended up saying these words after his misadventures with the talking donkey. We're talking Bilam. And just that, arguably one of the strangest stories in all of Tanakh. It's
Some of my Baptist students had this for Parsha.
right. I mean, the whole notion, the whole question. There's so many theological questions that story raises in the book of Numbers. It comes out of left field. It's the portion is named for the non-Jewish king Balak, who was afraid of the Israelites, and so hired Bilam, the sorcerer, to put a curse on them. But the whole notion about the rabbis, again, we talked about linguistic pretzel twisting. You want to talk theological pretzel twisting over issues of what would it matter what a human sorcerer said, if, on one side, human sorcerer, on the other side, God. Okay, that's not a contest. Why would God care what Balaam has to say? Why the whole big thing with the talking donkey and so on? What, lots of questions. But I just love the notion that what was supposed to be a curse ended up turning into a blessing. And that to this day, we say it when we come in to a synagogue and say, oh. So little did he know, little did Balaam know when he did that millennia later would be saying his words. So, now, as I said, this is kind of a parv form of the Birkot Shachar, because we've just done some things. Matohu is supposedly when you walk into a synagogue. Here on page 32, we get the Asher Yitzhar prayer, which we looked at a little bit last week, and that was the Torah of Josh from London, a prayer for the morning, which is exactly what it is. And again, but here it is. It's on page 32, and we're a number of pages in. So we talked last week about the kind of nice poetic, veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network on page 33, which was the old Gates of Prayer translation. But really, the Hebrew, the translation on page 32 is much more accurate. It's like openings and closings. Nikavim, nikavim, chalulim, chalulim. And if something that was supposed to be opened was closed, or something that's supposed to stay closed was open, well, wouldn't be able to stand and offer prayers to you, because I'd have bigger problems right now. So again, this is the quintessentially physical blessing of this section. And I do also want to call your attention one amazing thing about this prayer. So the Chatimah, the concluding line, which is usually the summary line of the idea of the prayer. Baruch atah Adonai rofeh kol basar umafli la'asot. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Now, that phrase umafli la'asot appears once in the Tanakh. Check this out. It comes from the book of Judges, chapter 13. And there's lots in this story as well. I forget what Haftarah. It's got to be for the Nazir. It's got to be, yeah. There was a certain man from Zorah, the stock of Dan, whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren and bore no children. Familiar thing. An angel of Adonai appeared to the woman and said to her, "You are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Be careful not to drink wine or any other intoxicants or to eat anything unclean. You are going to conceive and bear a son. Let no razor touch his head, for the boy is to be a Nazirite to God from the womb on. He shall be the first to deliver Israel from the Philistines." Okay, so this angel is predicting the birth of Shushan, Samson. A cautionary tale, because I've done classes and mini courses in Jews and superheroes and so on. He's the one superhero, as it were, of our Tanakh. He's not exactly a positive role model. So we get this, and then the woman goes, and who is unnamed, Mrs. Manoah, goes and tells her husband, and then the angel shows up again, and the woman goes and gets her husband, and the husband says, "What are we supposed to do?" Which always kind of struck me as like, your wife told you exactly what this angel said. Okay, right? You've got to hear it from the angel yourself. You don't trust your wife, right? So repeats it practically verbatim. And then they make an offering. Mr. and Mrs. Manoah, they make an offering. They offer they offer the angel, can we give you some food? It's like, nope, not gonna eat. They ask its name, and it says you mustn't ask that it is unknowable. A bit of a reflection of this week's Torah portion, where we get the famous wrestling match with Jacob and the Ish, which is a Hebrew word that simply means man. But what is it? Is it an angel? Is it his guilt, his subconscious for deceiving his father all those years ago, and so on like that? But a little bit of a riff there, because in the middle of the wrestling match, Jacob asks and says, "Tell me your name," and it's like, "No, angels don't tell names." And then this incident. Manoah took the kid and the meal offering and offered them up on the rock to Adonai. And a marvelous thing happened. While Manoah and his wife looked on, as the flames leapt up from the altar towards the sky, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flames of the altar while Manoah and his wife looked on, and they flung themselves on their faces to the ground. A wonderful, marvelous thing happened. Or in the Hebrew text, umafli la'asot, from the Fatima of this prayer. And what I love about that use of that phrase, umafli la'asot, which I believe only appears once in the Tanakh, is we are making a theological connection and an acknowledgement that, okay, here's this angel that's just foretold the birth of Samson, and who, and after doing that, gets into the fire of the offering and ascends up to heaven, this miraculous, incredible event, and the daily workings of our body. The fact that our body works as well as it does, when it does, is as miraculous as this angel ascending to heaven in the fire of the altar built by Mr. and Mrs. Manoah, parents of Shimshon, parents of Samson. I love that.
Is the bathroom here.
Yes, yeah.
And I have a laminated thing from an Orthodox home where they put it in the bathroom every morning to remind ourselves to be thankful that our bodies are working the right way. And,
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what that practice, I was,
Needlepoint, yeah.
Yeah.
Needlepoint and put it in.
there you go. So, like I said, I mean, here in Mishkan Tefillah, they put it after Matovu, which is say when you come into a sanctuary, but this is coming into a different room for a different purpose. And usually is done much earlier in the morning, shall we say. Following that, and actually in some prayer books, the order is reversed. We get this prayer, Elohai Neshama Shenatata Bi Tehorati. And so we've spoken about our physical bodies and the workings of our physical bodies, and then we have a prayer thanking God for our soul. And we have and opening up with this idea that Neshama Shenatata Bi, the soul that you have given me, Tehorati, it is pure. It is, this soul that you have given me is a good thing, which also is a pretty profound theological statement, especially in contrast to other faith traditions, which consider, born in sin, and or that this world and the physical aspects of this world are to be avoided, and to the idea is to escape from all of that. It's like, no, this is. Our souls are pure at their core, and this is a wonderful thing. This is a slightly edited version of this prayer, because it avoids a few things that the early reformers were. That the reformer was like, I'm not so comfortable about that. Find it conservative.
This would have been early in the Shacharit service, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that started at 9 o'clock in my synagogue when I was a kid and I wasn't expecting. to
Right,
be
and if
there,
you're in a
so
conservative or Orthodox setting, it's like,
usually the men were there and you didn't show up till 10 o'clock when it was a little
Right.
later, most of the Torah service.
yep, you show up for the Torah service, and that way you get to your Musaf, and that's it, yeah, it's, or when both of my kids became bar and bat mitzvah, and inviting friends of mine
Yeah.
to the service, ones that I knew were of a more traditional bent, said, the invitation will say 10 o'clock. That actually means 10 o'clock. If
Yeah.
you show up at noon, you're gonna miss it.
Right.
It's like-
People will already be praying, but that's
Yes.
okay. Come on in, you know.
So the prayer here, Eloheinu Shemashina Tatavi Tehorahi Asher Barata, you created it, Asher Yatzarta, you formed it, two verbs, meaning similar kinds of things, but the usual understanding of the Hebrew is bara, like in Bereshit bara Elohim, God creating the world at the very beginning, that it's out of nothing. What's the Latin phrase? Ex nihilo. Yeah. Whereas yatsar means to take something that already exists and to make it into a different form, like by taking a hunk of clay and making it into something different. So Asher Barata, Asher Yatzar. Ata nefachta bi, and you implanted it within me. Ve'ata mishamra b'kirbi, and you preserve it within me. What they omitted was the phrase ve'ata atid litla mimeni ulala hazira bi le'atid lavo. In the future, you will take it from me, but then restore it to me in the world to come.
Oh, resurrection.
That gets me. Yeah. I've had a good time talking with the Hebrew school kids about the option that Mishkan Tefillah restored of, you can say Mechayeh HaKol in the Gibor Road, or you can choose to say Mechayeh Meitim, which I explained why I do that now. But the idea that, we're not talking zombies, okay? It's metaphor. But even with that, I remember when Mishkan Tefillah was being field tested, that there were some Reform rabbis who were just like, no, we don't believe this. We can't have this in the prayer book. Like, it's metaphor. Don't take it so serious. Don't take it so literally. Take it seriously, but not always literally. Yeah, and there's Mitchell. You have lost Google password and yeah, okay, yeah. Okay. So now this next section, beginning on page 36. That's when we get these little daily blessings. One of the things I actually love about Mishkan Tefillah is if you look on the far right margin of the right-hand side of the page, on page 36, you have the kind of a metaphorical interpretation of the prayer as opposed to a literal translation of the Hebrew. So, for example, and I love the poetic metaphor they use with this one. Who is given the mind to the ability to distinguish day from night, the sechel, to tell the difference between day and night. That's not what the Hebrew says. What the Hebrew says, who has given the rooster the ability to tell the difference between day and night.
The rooster.
Cock-a-doodle-doo! Sunrose, cock-a-doodle-doo.
Natural alarm.
What's that supposed to be? That's a rooster?
Well,
Seven.
it was unexplained. It doesn't mean rooster.
Right.
And I think it's the only time in Tanakh and in the prayer book that word is used.
What's
And
the
it's
word?
something.
Sefti.
Something. And
The.
I think the rabbis were out here.
Oh,
Most had to
try to describe what is it that can distinguish between day and night.
Yeah.
And they came up with rooster, which is a very good, good explanation,
Yeah,
but it doesn't really say rooster.
no, it doesn't technically in the Hebrew
Or
say.
better, the translation is giving the rooster credit for having a mind. Rather than just.
Trying to find the,
To not reference.
all
Maybe.
right, the art scroll translates it as, who gave the heart understanding to distinguish between day and
Doesn't say
night.
legs.
No, it doesn't, it doesn't.
It's
But,
just-
but it's, as it says in the far right-hand margin there, it's for awakening. It's like the modeh ani lefanach. It's like, okay, the natural alarm clock just went off. The rooster, or my phone, or it's now light in the room, and whatever.
For a young parent, it would be a baby.
If you're a young parent, it's a baby, or it's the dog who has to go out, or the cat who is demanding to be fed.
Absolutely. Actually,
Now, human.
I
Feed me
think
now.
roosters perceive the dawn much before human beings.
Yes.
Mhm.
I remember being in Egypt the day picked up at 3:15 in the morning to go to watch the sunrise, and the roosters were,
We're growing up.
and there wasn't a bit of light from anyone.
Mm.
But they knew. But they knew. Yeah.
I like this one about the ability to stretch.
Yeah, that seems a stretch.
Yes, well, but,
Who's the captain?
no, it's,
That stretches you. Yeah.
well, and here, I love how they're metaphorically interpreting these prayers. So yeah, moving on, Pokeach Ivrim, opening the eyes of the blind.
Yeah.
But this is a matter of, again, you've awakened. And this was what this whole, mindfulness practice of mindfulness prayer practice was trying to, it's like before you get out of bed, say this prayer and then open your eyes and Pokeach Ivrim.
I see
Okay,
that
and then
as-
grab the glasses. so you can-
I interpreted that as understanding.
Okay.
One is the eyes of the blind.
Vision.
He is not so blind as, or he is not so blind as those he will not see.
Who will not see.
Whatever, I forgot.
Something.
But, that's how I.
Okay. And then going on, and this prayer practice, Jonathan Slater suggested, is like matir asurim, free the captive, and that's in liturgical sense, I'm aware. When we're talking that, we're talking someone unjustly. We're talking someone who has been imprisoned unjustly. But this idea of the ability to stretch, the ability to move, that again, early morning awakening, cock-a-doodle-doo, understanding to tell the difference between day and night, dream, eyes are open, stretch a bit, and it's like get our body stretching a little. Zokef kefufim, to lift up the fallen, for rising to a new day. It's like, okay, time to get out of bed. And again, this prayer practice that was suggested, I love the idea. I thought it was a great idea of embodying these prayers. Trouble is, I can't do all of these prayers with mindfulness and focus when I first wake up, because there are other things my body is telling me to do now. So,
Well, and I don't need to jump in again, but when I go over these with the finance student, I guess, yes, we read them literally and look at them, yes, and isn't it wonderful? But I also go over them with the mind of, what do these mean to you as a Jew? Opening the eyes of the blind, it's a mitzvah to, teach people, freeing captive. God doesn't free captives. It's our responsibility to do that because, God works through us, blah, blah. So yeah, as a daily blessing, sure, it has one context, but in another context, what's the prime directive? Make the world a better place. So you can look at it in two different ways. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
at least two different ways.
I was talking with my Hebrew crew on Sunday, and we were looking at the Hebrew roads, and and I said, look at the English translation. Tell me the things, Hebrew road it means God's powers, the things that God can do. I said, look at the translation. Tell me some of the things this prayer mentions. It mentions things like lifting the fallen, healing the sick, freeing the captives, etc. And so we generated a list. It's like I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, oh, that's nice, and 10 being, that's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Where did those miracles fit?
In the middle.
They're pretty modest miracles, I'd say. I put them as a 2 or a 3 at the most. And I said, it's like, when you think of the miracles that God does in Torah, what kind of things come to mind?
Parting the Red Sea.
Parting the Red Sea, the plagues in Egypt, the great flood in the Noah story. It's like these are pretty modest miracles. But then I finally managed to nudge him. It's like, what's being insinuated here in the Give a Road prayer? It's like, we can't be like God because we can't do these things. No, it's not talking about things that we can't do.
That's a good list. They're really good.
Yeah. Page 38. For firm earth to stand on again. Okay, so here you've gotten out of bed, your feet are now on the floor. Rokaha aretz al hamayim, the literal spread out, stretches the earth over the waters, because remember everything was water before God began creating. Strengthens our steps. So it's like, okay, legs are working. This is good. I can walk. Check.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to go.
Okay. All
Babysitting
right.
duty, but it's been great. Thank you. See you next time in person.
All right. See you next time, Betty. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Malbi Sharamim. That one's pretty literal. Okay. Kind of, especially since it's been getting colder. It's like, okay, where's my robe? Where's the next? If I'm not getting out from under the covers, I need the robe to keep me warm there. Giving strength to the weary. I like how it metaphorically calls it for renewed enthusiasm for life. That's it's a nice. Again, it's metaphor, and then I mentioned last week at the very bottom of page 38, who removes sleep from the eyes and slumber from the eyelids. L'chaim, there's your coffee prayer, which I do actually say when I get up and go out to the kitchen, and I've pre-programmed the coffee maker to brew a pot, and so it's ready when I get up, and so on like that. Before I take that first sip, I do very consciously say this prayer, because it's like, thank you God for creating caffeine and its wonderful effect on human beings.
For me, there's a big difference between give strength to the weary and renewed enthusiasm for life. It's like, there's a whole lot of steps.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Your arms are locking up.
right. That's what we need.
But I like what they were trying to do here, and I think they do it pretty well, just in terms of, you've got the pretty straightforward translation of the Hebrew text, but then suggesting, come on, don't be so stuck in the literal. You can take these prayers on a metaphorical basis. Rabbi Hoffman said ages ago, and I'm pretty sure he did this experiment, that showing people a translation of a prayer, exact same wording, but if you show them one where it's written like it's prose in a paragraph form in regular font type and so on, versus if it's written out like a poem and in italics, and maybe the ends of the line don't necessarily coincide with the end of the sentence and so on like that, and then getting their responses to how do you feel about this? Do you believe this? when it's presented, when it was presented in the form that we're used to reading poetry, people were often much more inclined to say, yeah, I get it, it's a poem, yeah, it's a metaphor. As opposed to you look at a paragraph as if it were prose, it's like, but that's not the way the world works. That's not accurate. And I just always found that fascinating. Just the way it's presented, textually, just the way, the font you use and the way it's laid out completely changes your sense of how you feel about that text. how you
So
feel
do
about that
you
phrase.
pick and choose these in the morning, or do you do them all, or? I mean, if I'm gonna.
It depends.
We've got a lot of making up to do.
I know.
Right, I mean,
We have to
Yeah.
set it down.
I mean, I've,
You know.
Well, even
Yeah,
though,
you
but
know,
then it's the student does.
Yeah, I mean,
But what we have had them do is we have them do the Baruch atah Adonai Elohim melech haolam.
Who starts as the earlier over the
Yeah,
water.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that's right.
But I mean, personally.
Oh, personally.
You all?
Can I say I do all of them every day? No.
Okay.
Legally.
That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
Pick and choose, or?
But yes, I mean, certainly you can pick and choose. Okay, you're looking at your watch anxiously, so that's okay. But yeah, and then I'll just briefly mention on page 40, you have the ones that as I said, you had the three that are in the Orthodox prayer book are rendered in the negative up at the top. Here in Mishkan Tefillah, it's She'asani B'Tselem Elohim, who made me in the image of God. Orthodox prayer book says, who did not make me a woman.
Yeah.
She'asani Ben or Bat Chorin, who made me a free person. In the Orthodox prayer book, it says, who did not make me a slave. Okay. And then here it says She'asani Yisrael, for making me a Jew. But in the Orthodox prayer book, it says Shelo Asani Goy, who did not make me one of the nations, the non-Jewish nations.
Going back to the first one, women do not visit them, they don't eat wine first. Traditionally.
Traditionally, it's not required of them.
Okay.
Um,
Well, they gotta get up and get that coffee. Yeah. So.
Look,
Yeah.
And bake the bread.
yeah, I mean, let's face it, many of these texts came from a far more misogynistic time than,
Yeah.
you know.
So, but women don't traditionally, that's why we did not make me a woman.
Right, because then I wouldn't have the opportunity to put on the tefillin and the talit and offer these.
They wouldn't have their things to do and then.
Right. And then the last two, Ozer Yisrael Bikura, Oter Yisrael B'Tipara, girding Israel with strength, crowning Israel with splendor, for purpose and harmony. That's a nice metaphorical interpretation. I haven't asked Elise Frischman, but I'm pretty convinced that we spoke a little bit about it last week, the idea of chosenness and the discomfort that the misunderstanding of that creates. That it would be very easy in a service to do pages 36 and 38 and then just skip a few pages ahead to something else, and we're just going to ignore these prayers here that are very particular.
Yeah.
It's interesting, in the Jewish renewal prayer book, they took out all references to chosenness.
Mhm.
Some of the prayers that we say automatically, like the Aleinu, they changed the wording around so
Yeah.
that they wouldn't have to say, we're special, or they just took that all out. So it's almost unrecognizable, certain parts of that.
Yeah, no, they changed the spelling of some of the words so that, the meaning changes. But, again, here in Mishkan Tefillah, page 586, and maybe we're gonna finish in 1 minute, or I'll take questions. We have not one, not two, but three iterations of Aleinu, this prayer talking about our special purpose here on this earth. And it's the bottom of page 586, that's the traditional formulation. But then you've got these others that, that play with the Hebrew and fudge with the meaning a little bit, so. Again, it's metaphor, it's not, well, aren't we special, we're so much better than everybody else.
Well, that's
Well,
why
I
you
am.
Right,
so picked on, I think,
yeah, well,
myself, I think they think, oh, the Jews, they think they're so good, they're so smart, they're so well,
We have, we can rule the world, have all the money.
yeah.
and the space race.
Yeah. But basically, oh, that's right.
Okay, I promised that we would end a little early because some of you are gonna be going to, somebody's gonna be going to.
Shalom, where they have a beautiful gift shop.
Maybe they'd like to take some of
You
ours.
know, I
Exactly.
already have, BJ, to the gift shop person there, Ellen, is going to come out and see if they want to buy anything for their gift shop.
Yay.
Yay. And Kendra, I have one quick question. I told my niece I would ask. What's the Jewish perspective on organ transplants? My niece has an incredibly tough job. She's an organ transplant coordinator in Denver. And she said yesterday there was a Jewish family in with a daughter in a car accident. And she was just, and my niece is not Jewish in terms of practicing or whatever, but she called me that night and said, I didn't know how I should interrupt their talks. They were really seriously talking about preservation of life and what's most important from our religion. And she was like, what do you know about that? And I thought, I don't think I know anything about organ transplant. Like, is it different with Orthodox, who you have to be buried intact and within 24 hours versus, do you have any insight on?
Yeah,
in
I
a
mean,
minute?
quickly, because I know you gotta get on the road. You gotta get on.
On organ?
From a traditional perspective,
Yeah.
the understanding was, and this again goes back to the Give a Road prayer and the idea of the Chayim Eitim, and that 2,000 years ago, they took that very, very, very literally. And as I was telling the Sunday Hebrew crew in my office, there are 3 of them, one on Zoom, and saying is how, every faith tradition in some way or another has to wrestle with this conundrum. If God is good and God wants us to be good people, how come there are so many good people who have such miserable lives, who have such a tough time of it here on earth? And every faith tradition has to answer that in some form or another. And they've got to come up with some kind of answer. Christianity has its answer. Islam, Buddhism, they all have their answers. Judaism's answer was that yes, that when Moshiach, a direct male descendant of King David, the anointed one, Moshiach, Messiah, arrives, the righteous dead will be physically resurrected and restored to life. So yes, they had a miserable time while they were alive initially, but if they were really good people and really good Jews, they will be restored to life. Okay? And that was the understanding, and that's why the cemeteries on the hill facing Jerusalem are so full, because that's front row seats. That's like first in line to get resurrected. And therefore the idea was you need your body buried intact, because it's going to be, you're going to be using it again. Now, this was from a time when the idea of organ transplants were unthinkable. And so nowadays, yeah, there's the serious question of, okay, if pikuach nefesh is the overriding concern and overrides every other negative, every other prohibition almost within our tradition, then how do you reconcile that with this idea that, well, you have to be buried intact versus this could save somebody else's life? So depends on how seriously they take that notion of yes, going to be resurrected come Mashiach arrival.
I know there are Reformed Jewish nephrologists who transplant kidneys all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's more,
Thought it was very,
more yes than no.
So
a subject
I
that
hope that
I really did
helps.
not know much about,
Yeah.
and,
Sure.
She should talk, there should be an emphasis in her hospital. or
Yeah.
whatever in that person. Yeah.
it was like the first time she read them,
Right.
yeah, that kind of,
Thank you.
All right, sure. Okay, no class next week. If you can, 10 o'clock Sunday.
We have some, Lori and I have 10 o'clock.
Okay,
We'll sit down and we're gonna eat.
Yeah, here, yeah.
Taking care of Lori,
Very good. All right.